Hello, everybody, and welcome to the episode number 5 of my new podcast, Multifamily Chronicles. My guest today is a very special guest, Mark Cukro. Mark is a professional in a multifamily industry that I've been following for many years. We have intersected a few times, not in person, but we know of each other. And I'm really honored to have Mark on a show. Mark, welcome to the show, sir.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Let's start by introducing you to our audience right here. Just tell us a little bit about yourself, about your background.
Sure. So before I entered multifamily, I was an HVAC contractor, and I've done trades my entire life. And when I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, I started in multifamily as a groundskeeper, and I occupied every position there is in the service department: technician one, two, three, supervisor, regional director. And then eventually I took on a national role for Cornerstone and Colonial Properties, and was the director of the development for their service teams. So, what that meant was developing training programs and then measuring the results in the field and then changing the programs. And over the years, outside of the industry, I was a public speaker. And now this is my 18th year on my own as a speaker and a consultant but my focus is specifically on developing the service departments, the training, the processes, the experience of all of that. And then outside of that, of course, and I can give every technical certification there is. I've helped rewrite, I don't even know how many versions of CAMT now, and I have CAPS and CAMT 1 and 2, and I'm a proctor for all of the HVAC excellence courses, swimming pool, NAAEI instructor. And it certainly doesn't mean I know everything. I'm still learning like everybody else. I don't even like to be in the company of people that act like they know everything. I think it's a little too arrogant. We all have our areas of expertise, and then we're novices in the things that we're not experts in. In addition to that, personally, I'm a professional jiu-jitsu coach, and I've had my own academy for this is my 18th year. And not only did I start one business, I started two at the same time, and then I'm also on the board for one of the largest associations. And so that's basically my personal experience. And then in my personal life, I've been very fortunate and blessed to be married to my wife for 22 years. We've been together for over 25, and we have wonderful kids, teenagers, twins, and that's it. So, I do my best to do my best in the industry and help people and companies develop service departments, but more importantly, the culture that is required to keep people, and then how do we invest in them in a meaningful way in the field. So, like, it's not enough to just say, okay, you should be grateful you have a job. How are we building people up, and how are we getting that done in a way that they want to stay?
You're making so many great points here, Mark. Yes, we have to provide meaning for our associates. It's really not enough to say, hey, you have a job. Like, be grateful that you have a job. In all honesty, there's so many opportunities out there for individuals, especially for highly qualified individuals, which I consider to be a experienced maintenance technician. Literally, if I look in my market here in Atlanta, where I'm based, I could type on my phone, maintenance technician in Atlanta, and probably I'm gonna have 30 to 50 openings right now immediately. A single individual that has the resume preloaded on their Indeed profile, they could
Hmm.
apply to 50 jobs in what, like 5 minutes, because it's a one-click apply, and then the competition starts. So the opportunities are plenty. It's just who is going to have the best opportunities in order to win the best talent, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's interesting because, years ago, your thanks and gratitude was a paycheck. And of course, things have changed now. The industry has become so much more professional, so much more demanding. And with those demands comes much higher expectations. And, what is typically happens is the bigger a company is, the slower it is to react. and they typically like to express and communicate how big they are and how successful they are. But it's rare that you hear a big company brag or boast or promote the fact that they're nimble and that they can move and adjust in a way that's meaningful to a small local market. And so I think everything is changing, and there's so many trades jobs open. And what's interesting is there are some companies, they don't have really any openings. They're full and the people don't leave. I mean, we have companies like that right now as we speak, and it's a rarity, but they're out there. And, my question really would be, why do some companies uh, refuse to look at the data and act in a way that's more measurable instead of try to conform the workforce to its own perspective? So it's really interesting to see, because the companies that are nimble and really go out of their way, and I'm not saying that you create this utopia for a workplace, it's just, we have to treat people in a humane, meaningful way that gives them some level of fulfillment and builds a sense of gratitude. Otherwise, they're going to leave and they're going to go somewhere else that can provide that. Even if the money's close, they're going to leave for a better environment. And so, if anything comes out of this entire past 2 years, I think a complete new shift in the way associates are treated and what we expect will surface because of this. Absolutely, for sure.
You're making a couple of great points that I want to touch on. One of them would be size of the company versus, thinking, we're the largest or we're large, therefore we're great. And I always make this comparison. I compare a large organization with a large ship, right? How easy to, how easy is to change course for a, very small, like fishing, vessel, very small, like two, I guess a small vessel that's designed for two or three, fishermen, just versus a commercial fishing boat, right? That's very large, that accommodates, hundreds of thousands of people on a boat, right? How much is it? So you're absolutely right. The larger the ship, the harder it is to change direction, and probably the willpower, it's not so much present there to make changes, to adapt very, very fast to new environments. And as you and I both learn, and I think everybody that's watching us now, this is a very fast changing environment. You have to act immediately,
Yeah.
just like that, to the market changes, because if you're not, you're going to be left behind, and talent just doesn't wait around. Talented individuals are knocking on many, many doors at the same time. If you're fortunate enough to have someone to show up on an interview and discuss the opportunity with you, you have to bet that that person at the same time is juggling, two, three, five other interviews. You're not only show in town. And with that in mind, what are you gonna do about it? What type of offer you're putting on a table? How fast you're gonna, act on that lead, and you have that offer ready for your candidate. And also, how do you present yourself in an interview? Are you presenting yourself as a person that does the interview, you're representing a company, you're the face of the company. The way that person perceives you as an individual is the way they see the company. Especially if they don't know much about your company, because you are the face. So what are you going to do in order to attract that, person, individual, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, in the interview, for the person that is a prospect, the impression they get from the person on the other side of the desk is the brand, period. Right. So, you can just look at it in a few simple ways. How can you communicate to someone in such a way that they can't wait to work for you? Right. Like, if you were on the other side of the desk looking at yourself, would you be impressed? Would you think they're a manager, a micromanager? Are you encouraging? Are you coercive? Are you too busy with everything going on that you're kind of in a rush through the interview? And you have to have a sense of urgency and poise at the same time. If your urgency communicates desperation, it's not a good message for the person that's on the other side looking to find a company to work for. And I know from personal experience, the one thing that just really is across the board that we need to improve is the way that technicians are treated and the way that they're spoken to. And very often, the perception of the people that are managers or in the office or corporate office are under the impression that their communication is appropriate and that it's professional. But in the field, from the opposite direction, it is not perceived that way at all. And there's stylistic differences in communication. So some people, you just may have a lot on your plate and you get to the point and the technician's like, you just can't talk to me like that. And then someone else is like, well, we just need it done. And they're like, okay, I understand, but you can't speak to me that way. And so we have to make sure that, there's no hierarchy in the way people are treated. You're either treated like a fair, decent, contributing human being, or you're not. And instead of looking at hierarchy, could you ask yourself, okay, how can we both contribute? How can we get the best out of each other? Can we both do our best instead of just give what's left of us? Right. And so I think though it's a simple, but it's not an easy thing to do too, but I think it makes a difference.
You're absolutely right. I just had very recent situations to where managers, community managers, address teams or individuals, service in the service professionals in a certain way. Just like you said, they thought they were professional. I honestly did not think that they weren't professional. It was just how their message was perceived. So, and I went back and I stressed to them. I said, in essence, you're absolutely right. All these things had to be accomplished, but I want you to please consider the problem is not what you said; it's how you said it,
Yeah.
how you came across to that individual. And I want you to please reconsider because it didn't go well. I actually had those conversations very, very, recent in recent weeks with a couple of community managers. And just because I try to help, at the end of the
Yeah.
day, if we're not avoiding, there's situations that could be, avoided, right? And once the situation is being created, we have to try to go back and, repair it, because if we're ideological about, our truths, and we say, well, I did everything right, and the other person doesn't think that, we did everything right, how we gonna bridge that gap? How we gonna close the gap? There is no way. We have to understand, we have to have this, self-awareness. Okay, hey, look, like I might have come across as wrong, and then I had to, apologize and, try to start over again. Maybe there's a second chance for us, because it's very, very easy for a relationship or a relationship to go sideways. It's extremely, extremely easy. You made a great point, Mark, earlier on. Uh, Basically, you were saying that, hey, the way you approach selling a opportunity to an individual is kind of like a sales. You didn't use the words, but in essence, it's exactly what you said. The way you present it, if it looks appealing, right, that person is gonna, buy into and maybe, sign up for your company. I've been stressing this for a while and saying that hiring managers, people that are interviewing, they're doing interviews, they have to be in a mindset, in a sales mindset. They have to think like salespeople. When you actually recruiting, when you're trying to find a person to fill a job opportunity, you're actually selling that opportunity to a public. So there's things, you have to consider. Where are your candidates living? For example, I've been big on, saying, look, if you're gonna advertise for groundskeepers and techs, you do not want to put your canvas on LinkedIn, because there's nearly no one qualified or interested in that type of opportunity on LinkedIn. Service managers, yes, probably they're more and more, coming to LinkedIn and becoming, members of the platform and, higher like regional type of levels. But for something that's groundskeeper, make ready, or technician, LinkedIn is not the place to advertise. And I would say, hey, there's Facebook groups, they're maintenance related, where maintenance people are like literally they're hanging out. I'm part of some of those maintenance groups, and that's where I spend quite a bit of time reading posts and comments so I could better understand exactly the things that matter to them. And just so we could be prepared when we make offers, when we talk to individuals, to candidates, we understand what's important to them, right? What's your experience with this, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, so if you, from my perspective, we talk a lot, especially in the corporate world, about, demographics and analytics and, multiple platforms and generational uses and preferences of Instagram and TikTok and LinkedIn and Facebook. And we don't really apply that to looking for technicians. Not really, right? So it's just interesting to see. But I think we have to understand where people are, where they congregate socially, technically, and then appeal to them there. But when you do an interview, the most important thing you can do is be completely present. If you look at your phone during an interview, the interview's over. You've already communicated to the person that the notification is more important than your attention. Done. And the thing is about the interview is you don't have to be over, you have to be professional, but you can be personable.
Establish a connection.
Human connection. And that doesn't mean be superficial. You have to be congruent, authentic, sincere. And if your culture doesn't match that person, then that don't stop right there and then help them find a job somewhere else because they'll probably refer someone to you down the road. And when you're known as a place that can match people with companies and positions, you're going to be a resource, a very common resource. Uh, Back to the communication piece, though. Some of the things, and you and I, we see this all the time, but please don't ask your technicians, did you do anything today? What did you get done? Well, I see this a lot where people walk in the office and like, hey, did you get anything done today? What'd you do? Please stop. If I came into the manager's office and said, hey, what'd you do today? Did you get anything done? Oh, I'm just joking. It doesn't come across that way. And that's probably one of the most consistent comments I get from having like in the field conversations with people. And, you know, and the thing is, you have to be you, and you can have fun at work and you can have a sense of humor, but not everyone appreciates your sense of humor, and you have to be okay with that. And then no matter how good your company is, someone's going to complain about it. And that's just how it is, but at least you're doing the best you can, whether that's with the presentation of yourself, the environment that people are in. The day-to-day experience is more important than the upfront promise. And so I think that's really important because if you don't prove what you said in about 90 days, people won't be there much longer. And that I think is really difficult for people because we acquire people like we recruit prospects. We do not acquire people with our environment. We're still thinking that marketing and advertisements are the best way to get people instead of having because if you have a great company, everyone's gonna gravitate towards you. I don't know very many companies that are amazing to work for that have huge gaps in their workforce compared to everybody else. So and there was another one too. This was yesterday actually. A manager posted a question and said, "My make readies are taking longer than they should. What can I do to make them or get them to do it sooner?" And I thought to myself, so you post a question like that instead of asking the technicians, hey, can you give me some insight as to why it's taken so long? Are they that bad? And it's like, okay, if you want realistic results, how about you have realistic expectations, realistic resources, realistic skill sets, and realistic timeframes? Maybe the units are trashed and they've been trying to put those off to get you the other ones quickly, and you're short on resources. And instead of going to the person and having like a logical uh, conversation to troubleshoot it, the person goes on social media and they ask for the input, and it's clearly not about the money, and because it was stated over and over, and someone actually said having a question like this presented is half the reason you don't have technicians. And I thought to myself, my goodness, what an uncomfortable truth, and medicine doesn't taste good sometimes, but it's supposed to make you better, and so I think things like that, could really help, as if we just address people and ask for them to help us understand their perspective.
It's very interesting, Mark, because I read the same question on social media yesterday,
Okay.
and I shook my head, and same feeling here. Hey, why not just try to learn from your own people versus putting the question out on the internet where nobody knows what type of asset you have, what type of units you have. Your people have the answer. It's so easy. It's so easy for us to make judgment, to pass judgment, and go everywhere else except going to the right people, which is our people. They're typically knowing better than anybody else what they're up against, what the challenges are. If we were just asking,
Yeah, just ask.
we would just take just make the simple effort to ask and find out.
I think also stop thinking every technician just lies to you or makes up reasons not to do. I mean, some do, but not the majority. And then the other part of it too is sometimes is if your staff is short, if you're short staffed, they're overworked, they're overwhelmed, they're pulling call, the sensitivities of communication are going to be much higher. So people will get I guess, upset or stressed out or more anxious far easier than if they were allowed or had a full staff, good management practices. They were allowed to take their time off without being contacted from someone at work. Because part of recovery, part of training and performance is time for recovery and to recharge mentally, emotionally, and physically. And if you're not completely disconnected from work, it looms over you in many cases, and you just can't get away. And so we need to let people get away. I don't know many people that come back from vacation for a week or two in a much worse mood. I mean, it takes 3 or 4 days just to relax, and then you have fun. And I think we have to make sure our associates know that we want them to recover and be the full person that they can be. And at the same time, you have to dish out some tough love too. And we can't overlook that. Standards are standards. Don't make them personal and don't take them personal. But every manager, regional manager, and VP should be treated the same way as every technician, supervisor, and groundskeeper in the field as a human being, right? Take your time, and hold everybody accountable. But at the same time, these things need to change in order for the industry to improve.
I really like to stop here for a few minutes, and you're just making a wonderful point. The point of everybody, no matter what position we're in, should be treated the same way with the same respect, right? Now, I think one of the things that our industry is lacking is to have sufficient comparable training for maintenance professionals versus the other side of the business, the office side of the business. And I'm going to be more specific, right? We do have certified apartment managers. We do have the ARM certification at IRAM. But everywhere I looked within the industry, right, I haven't seen a certification of certified service manager for apartments. So that itself kind of tells how the maintenance side of the business is looked at, okay, among other ways to be looked at. So that's one aspect. The other aspect is that I've been speaking with a recruiter, an executive recruiter recently, and he says something that literally just he was right in front of me. I would not see it. Look, when you're looking at corporate type positions for maintenance, they're seen from the very top, from the C-suite top. They're seen as cost not as someone that brings value, improves the operation, therefore makes me more money. They're seen just as cost. So when the need arises, like it's very easy for them to switch and say, well, now from being the national director or from being a senior area maintenance manager, we have needs. You're gonna have to put on your work boots and just be the acting service manager, right, for a certain property. I'm not saying that that's beneath someone in that position, because you and I both started as a groundskeeper.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of doing that, but I'm also saying that why would you have a person that's super qualified? Obviously, you have them in a the top position probably in your company, and you want them to do I'll say more of a entry. I'll say more of a just complete basic tasks. I do understand the need that sometimes it's you do here a day, you do there a day, but then if this becomes kind of the norm, what kind of value that person ends up bringing to your organization. So
Mm-hmm.
I kind of make 2 points here. This was the status of the maintenance overall in a property management organization, and then the training part and the certification part that I think we're missing as a national level, at a local level too, to my knowledge. Local associations, a certification for service managers. What are your thoughts, Mark?
Yeah, I think we need something specific to service managers. And I don't like the term supervisor because supervise implies to watch and not do, and it doesn't imply like a monetary obligation. So if you have someone that has good business experience, and I mean, I have 3 businesses, right? And they're all different. So you can run a business, but if you've never run a service department, you're going to run the service department in the ground until you have almost no staff. And then you're going to have this realization that I should have done it differently. And so we're trying to reduce that because running a service department is different. I think if anyone that's going to be in charge of a service department worked in the field for just more than 2 or 3 weeks, maybe a month, they would have a completely different perspective. Because if you look at cost per unit, you'll destroy the culture. If you look at the culture and you invest in that, it will generate profit and control costs because the behaviors are in place. And so it's very different. If you've never understood that, it's very easy to go, okay, this person and this person are like a part number and they're interchangeable, and they're just not, because it takes 3 to 5 years even to have moderate proficiency in trade skills per trade, right? So if you look at it, here's an analogy I like. People have been driving their whole lives. Every manager that's watching this drove to work, service manager, supervisor. But if you get a new car, it takes you 2 to 3 months to figure out where everything is, all the functions and features. You've been driving your whole life. So there's a learning curve that takes place. And I think part of that learning curve could be addressed managers. So the service manager that comes up from the field could learn how to run it more like a business. And the business person that comes into the field can learn how to run it more like someone that's in the field that gets what they need when they need it to do the job. So there's not a lot of parts awaiting orders. And, something that comes up a lot is when companies pay their bills slowly. It's thoroughly embarrassing to go to a supplier and have your accounts closed or on hold because your company is very slow in paying your bills. And whether the company thinks so or not, and it's just an oversight, the person at the register feels like all of the focus is on them every time that happens, and they don't want to do it anymore. And so, um, but I think we absolutely need service manager specific training. Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, I think we're both in agreement. And as I've been talking to many of our peers right there in the industry, I think everybody really acknowledges the fact that we have to start talking about it. We have to start creating this awareness. And in regards to paying the bills slowly, I like to kind of double down, right? A lot of the service professionals are especially the experienced ones, the ones that have been around for 5, 10, 15 years, they're coming to a new place, to a new company, to a new organization, to a new firm, and they're bringing their own relationships, right?
Mm-hmm.
Think about a service manager being around for 15 years, brings a great group of vendors, and they start performing the work for that particular property. And then 3 months later, he starts getting phone calls from his own, I will say his own, like people that he brought on board with him, right? Saying
Mm-hmm.
that, hey, can you help me, like, get this invoice paid? And then, when this becomes, kind of like a trend, that person would not feel great to use their own relationships that they had previously that they built. It
Right.
took them years to build, because at the end of the day, the person will feel betrayed. The vendor will feel betrayed too. They might not know what the situation is. They might not know that the service manager does not have necessary knowledge that company is slow to pay the bills, but
Yeah.
at the end of the day, they're facing a situation. They might face bankruptcy. They need to pay their employees. Most of the businesses that we're dealing with in a multifamily industry, they're family businesses. They're counting on their customer to pay their bills, on time.
Yeah.
If your customer doesn't pay bills on time, you might not be able to put food on a table. One of the things that I've been saying lately is that I want for everybody to acknowledge two categories that are the most underserved in our industry are the maintenance professionals and the vendors.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two most underserved categories. And I've been making a point myself to try to bring people on from service with service background and people from the vendor, from our supplier partner side, to show that, hey, we're all not different than everybody else in an industry. We deserve the same respect because we're bringing a lot to the table. You cannot run a property with a competent service department. You cannot run a business without your vendor partners. And the only way you could, keep them loyal if you treat them with respect, and when it's time to pay the bills, pay the bills.
Yeah. And I think, for anyone watching this, please stop asking your vendors for freebies. I see this all the time. I want money. Can you do it? It's just they're small businesses, and they don't have large budgets to just give away free things. And then sometimes companies will or people specifically will try to leverage the vendor to get as much as they can, and it leads to this vicious cycle, right? The other thing I want to say is, we talk about this in business a lot, like your network is your net worth. When you hire a supervisor or a service manager, they have a network that they bring with them, and they don't want to abuse that network by bringing them into a circle of business that's really slow to pay their bills and doesn't care. And and at the end of the day too, like, for everyone watching this, we want you to have an amazing property. We want it to run well. We want it to run smooth. We want you to be a successful manager, regional, VP. We want you to be a successful service manager and technician. But these are the things that really come up in the conversations that most people won't tell upper management, because they're afraid of retaliation or exclusion or things like that. But at the end of the day, I just want you to see clearly that we want you to have a very successful business with people that want to stay, and we want to see everybody do well. So I just want to make that, if what we're communicating doesn't come across that way, I want to make that crystal clear. And the thing with the technicians is everybody wants a career path. Everybody wants, now if they don't, that's okay, but people should know that there's a future for them in the industry. And maybe we do have to change things and set trends instead of follow them, and not worry so much about our peer groups, but let's be the ones that they resist, and then 2 years later they follow and start making these positions. Because if you don't do it and you wait for someone else to be ahead of the game, everything stagnates. And the people that move don't stagnate. The people that just wait usually do. So that would be my insight on it, and I think it would be a good start, everything that we're talking about.
Completely agree. Unfortunately, our format will will call for a stop right here. I won't call it a stop. I'll call it a pause, right? I
Okay.
hope that you will be interested and you'll make the time to come back and continue our conversation. Just record a part two because there's just so much more for us to talk about. I want to thank you very much for coming, Mark. And then in closing, would you like to share a few thoughts?
Yeah, I think here's a phrase, and I use this in coaching, and I mean this very sincerely, and it is so true. What you encourage is what you multiply, and what you enforce and reinforce is what you standardize, knowingly and unknowingly. So if you avoid something, that's taking action. You can call it inaction. If you address something proactively, that also will set the example for everybody. Uh, Everyone on this call, we want you to do well. It makes our day when we see you out in the industry in the field and you shake hands and you say, "Hey, I heard that thing or that idea and it made a difference and I tried it and maybe I adjusted it." But we really do want you to do well. And it would be great for you to just relieve the weight of let's at least experiment and try new ways to build a better industry and to create a place where we're the industry that people look to as the example to follow. So I appreciate you having me on the call, and let's definitely do another one. I could talk about this for days.
Great way to close, Mark. Again, thank you so much for coming. Thank you, everybody that has been watching us, that is watching us. This is your host, Adrian Danila. This is the Multifamily Chronicles, episode number 5. I hope you will come back and watch us again on the next episode. Thank you.
Take care.